Hello and welcome to our first Startup Women webinar of 2024 from Idea to Business. I'm Isabel Nolan, the Program Manager for the Startup Women and Startup Global programs at Startup Canada. To begin, I would like to acknowledge that even though I'm currently calling in from Ireland, I'd like to acknowledge that the land on which Startup Canada was founded is located on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation. We also acknowledge with respect the diverse histories and cultures of all Indigenous peoples. And I encourage you to take a moment today to acknowledge the traditional territory that you're residing on. We welcome everyone to connect with each other in the chat, so make sure that you're sending your messages to everyone in the room. Zoom tends to default it to only sending it to the hosts and panelists, so just to make sure that you change that to everyone so that you can connect with everyone that's attending today. Today's session will be recorded and we'll also add it to our YouTube channel afterwards as well as a living resource. A little bit about Startup Canada, if you're not familiar with us. We're a national nonprofit that's the gateway to Canada's entrepreneurial ecosystem. We're here to connect entrepreneurs with the support, community, and tools that they need to build a successful business in Canada. Since launching in 2012, we've grown to support more than 130,000 entrepreneurs annually, and an ever-growing community of ecosystem partners from coast to coast to coast. Dedicated to showing up for women all year round, Startup Women is an annual program offering support to early-stage women-identifying entrepreneurs across Canada through topic-focused webinars like this, industry advisory circles, and meetings with Startup Women leaders. We know that when you support women, you support a nation. Before we get started, we have a short message from one of our co-presenting partners, the Scotiabank Women Initiative.
The Scotiabank Women Initiative is dedicated to your success on your terms.
I'm shaping our industry's vision for the future.
I can expand my business without borrowing from my family.
I know I can face anything thanks to my network.
I'm ready for my next chapter.
I'm inspiring future leaders.
I'm making sure my family's future is secure.
Define your success, and we'll help you achieve it. With unbiased access to capital and tailored solutions, bespoke specialized education, and holistic advisory services and mentorship. Join our community of women today, the Scotiabank Women Initiative.
Thank you. And I'd also love to give a massive thank you to our other co-presenting partner, UPS, our program partners, EDC, Mastercard, and YSpace/Ella, where one of our speakers today is coming from, and as well as our community of ecosystem partners, and we'll share a full list of who they are in the chat. So today's conversation will focus on the foundational steps of turning your business idea into a reality. We'll cover the main components of what to include within your business plan and also answer the what next questions to help you put that business plan into action. We'll also share resources available to kickstart your entrepreneurial journey throughout today's conversation. We've prepared some questions for our panelists. However, if you have any questions throughout the conversation, you can go ahead and put that into the Q&A box, which you'll find in the function bar at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to have it answered live. So without further ado, I'm honored to introduce our speakers today. Maybe speakers, when I introduce you, you can give a little wave. So Nicole Troster, Entrepreneurship Manager at YSpace Ella. Keisha Turner, co-founder of Akwekon Enterprises and Starberry Drink Corporation. And Rochelle Rezansoff, Business Development Advisor at YWCA Metro Vancouver and the PowerUp program as well. So welcome, speakers. Thank you so much for being here today and taking the time to speak with us in our community. So to help frame today's conversation, I wanted to ask you each to speak on the importance of building a business plan. And Rochelle, maybe I'll start with you.
Yeah, for sure. So thanks, Isabella and Startup Canada, for having me here and to be able to chat a bit about the importance of a business plan. This is really something that's near and dear to myself with our programming throughout what we support with is the creation and the development of a business plan. And something I think, to get the conversation started here today, kind of high level overview of what's so important when you first think about doing your business plan is that it really creates that clarity of vision. So it's taking that idea, that concept, something that maybe you've worked with for a little bit, but it takes it and it really puts that business plan and crystallizes the business idea and puts it into formation. It goes through all of the aspects that you need to think about for your business and sometimes don't necessarily want to think about. Things like the financial forecast, operations, a bunch of components that maybe you have just overlooked due to the busyness of being an entrepreneur and getting started, and really goes through all of those pieces to bring clarity. And make a plan on how you want to achieve the next steps, the goals, your dreams, your aspirations, and lays that all out for you as a foundation. So I think that that's kind of like the first step when you think about a business plan. The importance of it is it providing that clarity of your vision.
Wonderful, thank you. Very well put, Rochelle, crystallizing the business for sure. Nicole, anything to add to that?
I think Rochelle gave a great summary. I think it's about not necessarily knowing all of the information either. If you have to make assumptions, making some really solid assumptions, putting the research into understanding, maybe a baseline. And then as you go along and you're operating the business, kind of, thinking of the business plan as a dynamic document and updating it as you go. Because you learn new things, you talk to people, you gain more insights, and then you plug that into the business plan to make sure that, first of all, it's updated, it's relevant, it's timely, and it's guiding you in the right direction.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Nicole. And Keisha, you're our entrepreneur in today's conversation. So for all of our entrepreneurs attending today, I think you're going to give really great, valuable background information for them and their journey. So what was the importance for you when you were starting out, both of your businesses?
Yeah, totally. And again, thanks for having me again, Isabel, and Startup Canada. It's great to be here. I would say, taking the time to actually build it and be patient, and actually iterate on the business plan, because the first time that you finish it and you look at it, you might think that it's perfect. And then, you've got to redo it. You've got to get some eyes on it. You've got to get people to look at it. You've got to get people to critique it. But it is a really valuable tool. And I would say the best tool, when it comes to financial projections, when it comes to understanding your operational requirements as well. And that was huge for us in, building Starberry Drink Co. Because we needed to know, our operational requirements were like top priority. And so having that business plan allowed us to have a better idea on what decisions we should be making at that point, and really help us with kind of tracking that progress. And so when you can, have something that helps you actually identify those potential challenges and the opportunities and some of the necessary resources you might need, having that business plan is, number one, and should always be looked at as, the most valuable tool for sure.
Wonderful, thank you. And I think you're completely right. It's a living document. It's not something you just make once and that's sort of it. It's always being modified and changed and updated. Something that's a really valuable thing to say. And a few of the things that you mentioned as well, we will be covering throughout today's conversation. So the first piece I wanted to touch on is market research and analysis. So attendees, you'll first need a good understanding of what your industry outlook and target market looks like. So this competitive research will show you what other businesses are doing, what their strengths are, as well as what their weaknesses are, and what will your business or what will make your business stand out from that competition. So Rochelle, maybe I'll go to you first. What are some key factors entrepreneurs should consider when conducting this market analysis for their business?
Yeah. Market analysis is huge. I think that it's a piece and a component of the business plan that a lot of entrepreneurs they know it's important, but maybe is overlooked with the amount of importance and impact that it can have long term in the business plan and with the longevity and support of your business and the success of your business. So I think really when you're looking at market research and identifying what can be the best way to go about this, you really need to identify a lot of key components that are going to support you with the development of your business. Something that we do throughout our business plan, and probably a lot of you may be familiar with, is a SWOT analysis. So there are a lot of different ways that you can go about this. You know, there's a CREST, a PEST analysis, if you want to look them up. There's a lot of different ways that you can look at this. But I find a SWOT analysis is a really, really good one to be able to break down various aspects and then identify them throughout the business plan as you develop it. So a SWOT analysis, to give everyone context, is for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So you're looking at your strengths, you know, internally, what do you have for strengths that you can apply to your business? What have you done in the past? What do you want to do in the future? Weaknesses, but the weaknesses, what can you turn into opportunities? So you're identifying those weaknesses so that you can build upon them, and you can identify them before they turn on you and ultimately impact your business. Then you've got opportunities, things that you can capitalize on, areas that you can grow and flourish your own company. And then you've got the threats. These are external things that you can't necessarily control, but you can be prepared for. And this is a really good one as a foundation for you as you're looking into those competitor analysis, the target audience, all the various components of market research that can really help you structure and develop your business plan.
Thank you, Rochelle. And Nicole, I want to go to you next as well. And, you know, especially talking about the work that you're doing within YSpace, any other factors that entrepreneurs should be considering with this step?
So I want to hone in a little bit on like customers. I know Rochelle talked about this just, you know, in passing, but really having a good understanding of who the potential customers are. And, you know, having conversations with those potential customers to understand, you know, what are their pain points? What are the alternatives that they're currently using, you know, to solve this problem that they're trying to solve, kind of thing. And that will actually help you down the line, because when you create your marketing plan, you know, all of this is going to feed into that. So it's important to do the research up front, really understand who the customer is, you know, create a persona for, you know, one customer that you want to really help, and make sure that everything's aligned for those customers' personas and the benefit that you want to give to that customer. The other thing that I will say is a lot of entrepreneurs say that they don't have competitors necessarily, they have a novel idea. The one thing you need to think about is it may not be a direct competitor, it could be an indirect competitor, but people are already solving that problem in some way. So you need to have an understanding of what is the alternative that they're currently using, what does it cost them, what do they like about it, what do they not like about it? And that'll feed into, you know, the opportunities that Rochelle was really talking about. So we'll just raise those two specific points.
Absolutely, yeah. And I completely agree in terms of competitors. There's always going to be someone within your field or adjacent to it that is solving a similar issue just in a different way. And I think when you're having conversations, you know, with people that you're looking to get funding from, it shows your knowledge of the landscape when you have looked at all the different types of competitors and having that. So having a blank almost is a it's kind of a no-go when you're talking about that specific thing. So always ensuring that you're aware of, you know, who your competitors are, and to your point, who your customers are as well. So Keisha, when you were starting out Starberry, can you maybe talk through how you effectively identified your target market and assessed the market as well?
Totally. And we actually had so much fun when we were kind of trying to figure out who our market would be. And so I'll tell you exactly kind of how Starberry Drink Co. did it. And so, you know, our problem obviously that we're trying to solve is to offer a healthy, you know, not preservative-free beverage that is also Indigenous. My husband is the co-founder of this company as well, and he is Mohawk. And so you know, we know that we're differentiated in that way, but we really wanted to make sure that we understood our customers. And so the first thing that we did was we made a bunch of the drink. We brought it to all of our friends who also had children, because that was a market that we wanted to test as well. So we got to test it with adults. We got to test it with children. So we just drove to their houses, dropped off a bunch of the Starberry drink. And it really started to teach us a little bit about our customer. Was it sweet enough? Was it too sweet? Was it watered down? And all of these different things that were giving us so much information that we could actually kind of move forward with kind of our next piece, which would be, us being at the farmer's market and testing our product there. And so once we got that perfect recipe, we were able to go to the market. And what we do still is offer samples. And so we are, face to face with our customers, our potential customers. And for about every time basically someone tastes Starberry, they buy. So it's like that, that saying of they try, they buy. And so for us, we get to hear the kids that love it, the kids that don't quite like it and don't maybe understand that it's not supposed to be such a sweet drink. We get lots of adults that try it and they're like, wow, like this is such a different, a different juice, a different taste, because it is made with just 3 ingredients. And so we really want to push that. And so being able to identify our customers' needs through these channels, specifically at the market, because you get everybody from, the working professional to students to young kids who are there with their parents, just who have their own money, who can come and kind of taste Starberry. And so that's really taught us a huge lesson in who our market is, where our market is, how we can find it. And now as we're kind of, moving forward from those market experiences is getting into the grocery stores. And so that's kind of our next goals. And I guess we'll talk about that as we go through, but that's a little bit about how we kind of connected with our customers and continue to connect with our customers and potential customers is through, getting Starberry Drink Co. on people's lips so they can actually taste it and give us that true feedback. So it's a really, really fun time to do that too.
I love that. That sounds like a really great and creative way, but also very practical as well. Like you said, getting it to the customer and getting that feedback and getting them to try it. I think you're getting like upfront feedback from people. So that sounds great. If you're ever testing more flavors, let me know. I would love to test it out myself.
For sure.
So once you've kind of gone through that component, the next thing is the organization itself and the management. So your company structure and management are crucial aspects of any business. And your business plan will need to state how you'll legally structure your business. So whether or not you intend to incorporate your business, form a general or limited partnership, if you're a sole proprietor or a limited liability company. Speakers, what advice do you have for founders regarding choosing that right company structure? And Nicole, maybe I'll go to you first this time.
Sure. So this is something that I think people may not spend a lot of time thinking about, but it can have repercussions down the line. If I'm thinking about, for example, sole proprietorship versus incorporation, there are differences, and I think it's important to kind of leverage the resources that are in the ecosystem to have a better understanding of like what the specific nuances of each of the types are and the legal risks, the operational risks, those kinds of things, but really to inform yourself about like what are the different structures. So one of the things that I'm thinking of, for example, is that for corporations, you have legal responsibilities from a reporting standpoint, from a fiduciary standpoint. It's not just setting up a business. Like you have to make sure that you have your bylaws in place and that you file your corporate income taxes. And, it can have ramifications on things like getting grants from the government or from other institutions. So this is something that I don't think that founders should take lightly, but really like make sure that you're informing yourself on what you need to know about choosing the right structure for you and your company.
Thank you. And Rochelle, advice on the same piece in terms of founders starting off with that, regarding choosing that company structure.
Definitely. So I think what was just stated, understanding your options is really key, making sure that you do that research, see what's applicable to you. It's not black and white. So it makes it a bit more tricky. And in a lot of circumstances, you need to see what's going to be right for you in various stages. But I think another piece to be aware of and mindful of as you're doing your business plan, even the first few years in, even longer, is you need to be prepared to adapt and change. you know, you might be a sole proprietor now, that's working for you. You wrote your business plan on that. And a year from now, you realize you need to incorporate your business. We had this circumstance happen in one of our program participants. The end of the programming, she was going to incorporate her business. So her business plan, although it was in the great trajectory, it needed to be adjusted a bit for the incorporation that she was going to be doing in the new year. And it was just with a change in her business, the way that she wanted to structure it. If you're going to be looking for funding, there's various ways in which you want to make sure you're being mindful, but being able to adapt and just being ready for that. If the one structure for your business is not right at a certain time and you need to change that, you can change that, right? Being flexible and being adaptable, even though your business plan says one thing, you might need to take a look and see how you can reevaluate that in the future.
Yeah, then that's a great point. And I think also, you know, down the line, you know, to build your business up for success, it might also be great to separate, you know, yourself and the business, so that it's not you that's liable if things go wrong, that it, you know, you have a separate business set up. So keeping those sort of risks in mind as well. And Keisha, you know, what was this process like for you? What sort of structure did you decide to go with?
Yeah, totally. So we decided to incorporate, and you know, for the most part, our reasons in doing that were because we're actually bootstrapping the business, right? And so having that kind of legal advice like Rochelle and Nicole kind of chatted about was given to us. And you know, we were lucky enough to have some connections through friends who were able to kind of sit us down and actually go through each of the differences between them so we could make a sound decision. And so that would be like my biggest piece of advice to anybody listening today is if you can take the time, you know, you might get really excited and want to just like send in your business registration and get it all done. And, you know, you've got your business registered, but taking the time to actually look through it, look at the different structures, understand what they mean to you. And just like Rochelle said, understand what they mean to you down the road and down the line. And so taking that time to do that, I think is super important. And that's something that we did. And, you know, we felt very comfortable with moving forward with the registration of the business and how we set it up and what that structure looked like. And, you know, now a few years down the line, you know, we're set up for success. So, yeah.
Wonderful. And in terms of, you know, when through your business plan, talking about your team, who's on your team, can you maybe speak to the type of information that you were providing on your business plan about the people that are working with you?
Yeah, totally. So for the most part, we kind of started out just three of us. So myself, my husband, and another a friend that was kind of, you know, by our side as we kind of went through all of this. And so we really wanted to work on what our strengths were. And so kind of identifying, you know, who takes on these operational processes, who takes on more of the marketing processes, and things like that. And so for me, you know, my strengths were always through marketing and operations. And so I definitely took that piece on. My husband kind of took on more of the face of the business and the face of Starberry Drink Co., where it is, you know, indigenous owned by him was a really important piece for us and to really kind of showcase that. And so, yeah.
Lovely, thank you. And I just want to say to anyone that has just joined, we are welcoming questions from our attendees. So if you want to put any questions you have for our speakers into the Q&A box, and we will do our best. We have about 10 minutes at the end to get to some of those questions. So just to bear that in mind, I see that some really great engagement in our chat. All right, so next sort of component is the marketing and sales strategy. So developing this strategy is quite essential to reaching your customers and driving revenue, and you'll need to showcase how you intend to do this. So Rochelle, I'll go to you first for this question. What are some practical tips for early stage entrepreneurs looking to create a compelling marketing plan that is tailored to their target market?
Yeah, this is a big one. And I know marketing is always really enticing. It's a big piece of any startup business, really any business, right? We see a lot of advertising every day. And so we are often thinking about marketing and branding and what that looks like. And I think something to be mindful of and something we've seen in our past cohorts is that it doesn't necessarily, and just kind of start this conversation off, doesn't necessarily at the beginning need to be super expensive. So if you have done what we've talked about before, you've identified your target market, you understand who you need to be in front of, you've done that research, you have a good understanding, then you can start to identify, where do those individuals frequent? How can I get in front of them? Is that through, are they at, like Keisha's saying, at markets? Are they frequenting markets? Can I go there? Can I be giving away free samples at a market? Are they at community centers? Can I be putting up flyers for my service that I do at a community center? Are there other ways? Are there groups online that I can be promoting? Are there people within my community that I can reach out to and connect? So a lot of it, I think as the growth and expansion of your business, you definitely need to identify in your business plan the growth and development of your marketing plan. Is not always going to need to be this bootstrapping, very inexpensive, like you're doing all the work. But to get started, if you've done that research and investigation, you can start reaching out to your community and doing a lot of that marketing. And some things that give you really great feedback, input, making sure that you better understand who you're targeting is going to support you with that marketing initiative, like we were talking about before, and the longevity of it. So something to keep in mind, there's a lot of resources in our community to help you with that better understanding your market research, but also knowing that there are inventive ways to be able to market to your community that you want to sell your product or service to.
Thanks, Rochelle. And actually, Keisha, I'll go back to you, because when you were talking about your market research, it almost sounds like you were sort of blending your market research and your marketing and your brand building sort of all into one, which I think is a really unique and fun way to do that. So I'm curious to know, beyond that, what else were your what was your strategy in marketing and sales? And then I know you also mentioned looking to get into grocery stores as well. So maybe you can touch on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. So one thing that we really did kind of after we did all of that market research through the market, and I mean, we're there every week still, and we kind of go from May to October. And so we have all of that time to do it, but was really leveraging some of our friends who were in the marketing space. And so one of my best friends, for example, her company, 111 Marketing, she helped us out immensely. So once we kind of collected all of that market research, we were able to kind of sit down with her, and she asked us all of like the great questions, likely that Rochelle and Nicole kind of do in their process with entrepreneurs. And so, was there more kids asking for this? Was there more adults for this? How was the taste? Those things. And so it really allowed us to kind of identify three, kind of core communities. And so adults, children, and athletes, or people who are active. And then from there, it was all about that engagement and collaboration. And so what we did essentially was just ask people to, jump into a yoga class. I actually teach yoga, so it was a little bit easy for me to kind of go in and say, hey, I've got Starberry for everybody. I'm going to engage them. I'm going to tell them the story about Starberry and how it happened and what it looks like. I was also kind of dragging my husband along to some of these different women events that were happening, but actually using him as a way to help me market Starberry as well. And so he would come in and speak to the Indigenous piece and the importance of that and what that looks like. And so leveraging community for us has been huge. And I think as Black and Indigenous entrepreneurs as well, it's really served us well, because there is that kind of initial support and initial excitement that happens through that marketing, because, when you're chatting to people who know you or who know your experience, they're excited for you, and like genuinely you can feel that excitement. And so really that kind of gave us in the end this opportunity to kind of empower people who were truly who truly cared about Starberry, right? And who truly care about us as people, to kind of use their word of mouth as a way to like endorse Starberry drink. And so it's been a fun and kind of cool and also just different way of, I think, kind of conducting that market research and figuring out how we were going to market, and just having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a great way of starting off, and yeah, like you said, tapping into your community and sort of building out from there. And I think one of the best ways to learn about different brands is through word of mouth and then having, you know, recommendation. I think that that speaks volumes for your business and your brand. And Nicole, how about you, you know, in terms of the entrepreneurs that you work with, what sort of advice would you give them with either marketing or sales strategy?
For sure. So one of the things that I would encourage entrepreneurs to do is to actually start out narrow. A lot of entrepreneurs want to start out wide, talking to everybody, capture everybody, but then it's hard to say something to everyone that resonates with everyone. So starting out narrow and really honing in on your target market, having a good understanding of who the people are in those groups is really important. And then if you want to kind of expand and move to other groups, after you get a really good understanding, that's the way that I would recommend doing it, as opposed to, you know, casting a really wide net and then really not capturing anybody in that net. I think that's probably my best piece of advice. And then just, you know, Keisha was talking about the iterative nature of like the business plan. I'm surprised at how many entrepreneurs don't leverage their social media to understand like who is following them, who's engaging with them, like have an understanding of like the demographics of the people who are following you. You know, what about psychographics? Is there a specific way that they think or things that they're interested in or value that are, you know, important for you to tap into when you're speaking from a marketing standpoint? You know, just having an understanding of who your people are in comparison to the persona that you kind of put together in the beginning, like making sure that those are aligned is really, really important, so that you're speaking to the right people, saying the right things, and connecting, you know, and nurturing those relationships essentially.
Absolutely. And I think we actually had a question from an attendee asking about leveraging social media to do their market research. So I think absolutely, you know, look who's following you, and ensure that you're crafting their experience to what they're looking for. So yeah, whoever answered that question, the answer is yes. I think you can definitely leverage your social media for that research piece. All right, so the big question in terms of funding requirements, and I will say before we get into the funding requirements aspect of the conversation, Startup Women will be hosting 2 different webinars throughout the year, one on finding grants and writing grants, and then the other one will be focused on bank loans and that whole process. So for today's conversation, we will keep this part quite high level, but we do have other resources and other events planned that we'll be able to dig quite deep into these, because this is definitely something we could spend hours and hours discussing. So just wanted to put that little caveat in there. But in terms of funding requirements, of course, this can significantly depend on your business model and your industry, but you will need to outline how much funding that you'll need to start off at least, but also how you intend to spend that money. So Nicole, I might throw it back at you if that's okay. For this one, what advice do you have when it comes to determining a business's funding needs? And then what are some potential funding resources that are available to them?
So one area that I think is really, really important is, you know, we talked about this in the introduction. Sometimes we shy away from looking at our finances and really scrutinizing like the money that will be needed to kind of start up the business because of our own fears around money or beliefs around money. And it's really important to kind of try to put some of that aside or address it, you know, get help with them so that you can really focus on the finances, because a lot of businesses fail because there's not enough attention put on these things. So having a really good understanding of the finance, making really sound assumptions. There's a lot of research, market research, you know, economic information, market information, industry information. Industry Canada has like industry statistics. And I always talk about the idea that you can use those to base your financial assumptions on. So there are tools out there, there's free information out there, but you've got to make sure that you look for it and you leverage it, because the financial piece, I can't underscore how important it is to make sure that you have an understanding of what it'll take. And then in terms of funding instruments, like Isabel talked about, it depends on the industry, what your growth projections are for your business, how quickly you intend to grow. Each case is a little bit individual. from that perspective, but draw on resources like Startup Canada, like our local small business enterprise centers, YWCAs, incubators, accelerators like YSpace. We have all built incredible resources to help you break this down, have a really good understanding, and also to get funding. So make sure you know about the funding instruments that are available in your province and in your community.
Thank you, Nicole and Rochelle. I'll throw the same question over to you as well in terms of determining the business funding needs, and then any resources that you're aware of that can help.
Yeah, great points, Nicole. I think I'll resonate with all of those. And I think something to build on that as well, the financial piece of your business plan, huge, and understanding then from there, all of these different funding options. What is and are available to you? There are resources to help you in better understanding how you can access them, but you also need to know what is available. Like, are you aware of, venture capitalists, angel investing, grants that are available to you, your own personal investments, crowdfunding? Like, there's so many different options that are out there. There are resources to help you to obtain those different funding options, but are you aware of them, right? We often will talk heavily about grants or talk heavily about, venture capitalists, and maybe individuals are not as aware of all of the different options that are available and what might be the right option for you at various stages in your business. So identifying what is right for you at a certain stage, knowing that what is going to be expected from you as a reporting, as some type of this is a financial component to your business. So you have to be very mindful of what that's going to look like and the impact that it's going to have in your business long term. So just really understanding your options and then how it impacts you where you're at in your business at that time.
Thanks, Rochelle. Yeah, fantastic points from both Rochelle and Nicole. And Keisha, I know that you mentioned that you have primarily bootstrapped. So I'm curious to know, have you gone through this process of planning out other funding avenues for Starberry?
Yeah, so our journey through funding is always interesting. So again, I kind of share that, this is a Black and Indigenous business. And our experience it's been a challenging one, because although there are so many, we talk about all of these funding opportunities that are out there, but also they're not available to everybody. And so when we look at different funding opportunities that might be out there and that we may qualify for, some of the barriers that we've run into are things like, we've won a grant, it's a $4,000 grant, but we have to spend $4,000 before we actually get reimbursed for that grant. And so for myself and for my husband, as Black and Indigenous entrepreneurs, we've never actually had access to capital. We both come from families who have absolutely no generational wealth. And so that's always been our biggest challenge. We have these big ideas, we want to start all of these businesses, but it's little things like that within those funding opportunities that people don't often talk about. And I wanted to share that here today, because that is something that is a struggle, right? If you're looking for $4,000 and you think you're going to win that, you pitch something, but then they tell you have to pay up front, that is a huge barrier, right? And so one thing that we've done, and we've done this in the past for other businesses that we're working on as well, and through innovation, but my husband and I are really good at pitching. And so when we step in front of someone, we're very confident that we can pitch our business to a T, let people understand, the importance of it, the excitement about it. And so what we do is we enter pitch competitions. And I can't stress enough how that's kind of changed our outlook and our ability to generate some revenue and some funding for ourselves just through us. And then that actually has brought up different conversations around those challenging funding opportunities when, they say there's so much money out there, but we're not actually able to receive it, has really helped us. And so, my advice, if you're in that same kind of, situation that my husband and I find ourselves in, at the beginning of your business, I encourage you to do those pitch competitions, because it's a good way to get that kind of clear funding. There's no strings attached. You show up, you do your best, you win, and you take home the money. And then that can be a way of, just starting up your business. I know that my first time I pitched, I won $500 and I was able to go and actually incorporate the business. And so use that money to kind of, start that flow of things and get it moving, which was really exciting. Right. And I said, okay, if this is what we can do, and this is what we have to do as we kind of figure out these different funding avenues, then we'll take advantage of that and kind of work through the process as we go. And so it's fun, it's challenging, and, you've got to persevere and definitely have that persistence, but it does work out in the end.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll also attest to how fantastic pitch competitions can be. It's free money. Like you said, there's no strings attached to use however you see fit with your business. And also a great skill set for an entrepreneur to have to get up and pitch their business, hone that pitch in to, when you get to that point of perhaps pitching in front of investors, it's you've already flexed that muscle many times before. So you get even more comfortable talking about your business and answering questions about your business as well. We do have a pitch competitions. I'll do a small plug. We do have a pitch competition with our Startup Global program. So we can share some information on there as well. But there's so many different types of pitch competitions you can apply to, both in person and virtual throughout Canada. So definitely a great piece of advice there, Keisha. So the final component of a business plan I'd like to touch on before we go through that, what next aspect, is the financial projections. So this plays a critical role in business planning and decision making, and it really should be there to supplement your funding requirements to show your business is stable and will be a financial success. So Rochelle, I think I'll maybe go to you first. So, are there some key financial metrics that entrepreneurs should include in these projections, and maybe how can they ensure that financial forecasts are realistic and achievable?
Yeah, for sure. It's a big part of the business plan. We've stressed this financial component. Financial forecast is really, really important when you're creating and developing your business plan. And inputting all of these other components is going to strengthen your financial forecast and the financial projection that you have. So making sure that you have an accurate marketing plan, that you know the reach and the target audience that you're going to be impacting, making sure that you have the outlines of the operations and how all of that is going to come together in your financial forecast. But I think another way for you to look externally from your own business plan and see, is this something that's accurate, is to really compare it within the industry. So looking at industry standards, looking at those benchmarks that other companies might be hitting, your competitors, you've done your competitor analysis, so you know who they are. So seeing similar businesses within that competitiveness, what does it look like for them? Trying to break that down and better understand. And then just really making sure that you're building in all of those pieces, like the operating expenses, your startup costs, you're looking at your cash flow, and making sure all of those pieces come together to provide you with the most realistic financial forecast for your business plan and the start of your product or service.
Thank you, Rochelle. And Nicole, anything to add to that?
Yeah, that was a great description. The only other thing I would want to add is, kind of looking into the future, you might have an understanding of what your costs are today, but if you're talking about 3 years from now and, increased demand for your product or service, what are the other costs that you're going to have to help you make sure that you can deliver that product or that service to more people, and start thinking about like the added resources that it would take and building that into the financial plan.
Excellent point. Yeah, thank you so much. And because we're sort of at the last sort of 15 minutes or so, I would love to kind of move on then from, okay, so the entrepreneurs have gone through the process of building their business plan. What are the next steps then that they should take to put this into action? And Keisha, I'd love to go from your perspective, when you created the business plan, what did you do to then sort of get the ball moving with Starberry Drink?
Totally. Well, Starberry Drink actually kind of came to fruition rather quickly. And so we kind of had to be on our toes, which was like both exciting and both challenging. And so I would say putting the plan into action, we were actually building the business plan, and through each of the steps of building a business plan, we were building Starberry Drink. And so as we would do, our first piece on, what the business operations are going to look like, we would actually just do all of that, make sure we understood it. And then we were like, okay, how can we implement this now? And the reason why we did that was because the idea kind of happened in January. We wanted to be ready for summer. We knew that it was like totally outside of, what business people might recommend, like, hey, you should probably sit on an idea for a while and let it kind of brew and get all of those ideas. But we were so excited to get it done because we knew we had a good product, and we knew summer was coming up and strawberry season was coming up. And so we were like, we can do this, but we've got to do it in a way that makes sense. And so with each piece of that business plan, we kind of implemented everything as we went. And so really my biggest advice would be to, focus on the execution and just do it. And I know that sounds probably super like, the famous Nike quote of just do it. But it's one of those things where like, if you don't actually execute, once you've kind of figured it out, then it actually takes more time and kind of you waste a lot of time just kind of trying to figure the other little things out. But once you've got the idea, you've got those projections, you know what it's going to look like, even if it's not perfect, like step into it and you want to execute. And so, when Starberry came to fruition, we started at the market. And so we had, not a lot of cash flow at all. We just kind of got the little things that we needed to set up the market nicely. And we were able to start selling the product and getting it on people's lips. And so we weren't really concerned with like how it looked like at the market. It was a really cute setup, but like it looked a little bit cheap, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't like such a setup we were so excited about. But the importance was the product, and the product getting onto people's lips, getting into people's hands, and getting that customer feedback. And so, execute when you can and go at it hard. And even if things fail, you'll problem solve along the way. And I'm a huge problem solver. I love to solve problems. So anything that comes at me, I'm like, well, you know what? We can still do it. Even if it's raining and snowing and the market, nobody's going to be at the market. We're still going to do it. We're still going to show up and get that stuff done. And so that would be my biggest piece of advice.
Thanks, Keisha. And can I ask, did you get to launch by that summer?
Yeah, we did get to launch that summer. So we were in the market right away. And had a lot of support from the market. And we actually entered the market through a Black and Indigenous program, which was really cool for us because it gave us a lower table fee. So they were looking for Black and Indigenous vendors selling their products at the market. And they said, hey, we don't currently have any. Would you like to come in? Here's the table fee. It's a little bit less. And so that also was something that in looking in our business plan, when we first started, we were thinking, okay, it's going to be $100 a weekend. We need to sell X amount of Starberry units to make this. But then we went into it in our first few months and we were only paying $30 every single Saturday, which was like such a huge like relief. And it doesn't seem like, $60 is a lot at that time, but once you're there every single Saturday and it starts to add up, you realize, where that's going. And so that was a good and great opportunity that we were able to have and kind of allowed us to jump over some of those hurdles and barriers with, entering the market and things like that. So yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Would you mind sharing the name of that market in the chat, just in case there's anyone else in a similar position to you that might benefit from that?
Totally. Yeah, it was the Halifax Brewery Market, and I'll put it there for sure.
Thank you. Rochelle, how about you? Advice on entrepreneurs putting this business plan into action. What are some of the first steps?
Yeah, something we really like to stress, and we actually spend quite a bit of time on throughout the business planning stage, but towards the end of the completion of our program is an action plan for 6 months. So you've got your business plan for 2 years. You have this large concept of what you're going to do. Maybe it's even longer, but ours is for 2 years, financial forecast. But what are you going to do upon the completion of writing this business plan? What are you going to do for the next 6 months? What are some actionable items? Maybe if you resonate with SMART goals, you've got your SMART goals set out. But what are your plans for the next 6 months that you can really have some attainable goals? You've set some parameters for yourself. You know what you're going to do. You know, maybe you're going to go to, say, 6 markets in the next 6 months. You're going to give out 100 samples to individuals. You're going to get 50 surveys. You're going to look and update your website, create a website. So what do you have for the actionable 6 months? And how can you start to really implement the business plan that you've just spent time creating, developing, maybe actioning, as Keisha did, as you're doing it? But what does it look like for 6 months from now, opposed to that really huge, like 2 years in advance? So putting something into action and then making sure you're holding yourself accountable to those actionable goals.
Thank you. That's a fantastic idea of breaking it up, so like 6 months, it doesn't seem like such a massive hurdle, and breaking it down further from within the 6 month timeline. Thank you. And Nicole, how about yourself? Any advice on actioning this?
I love what Keisha said. I think it's all about taking action, even if it's small actions like every day towards the business that will get you closer to your goals. And sometimes people are just so paralyzed about doing things perfectly that they never really start. We don't want to see that. Like, we want to see you chase your hopes, your dreams, your passions, and to help more people. So go out, do the things, and, spend some time thinking. Like Rochelle was talking about the 6 month plan. I think that's also valuable in the sense that you can document things that you're afraid to do, and you're putting off, you're procrastinating on those things, and make sure that you're like pushing yourself on the things that you don't want to do, like going and talking to customers. Like, that's the number one thing that you should be doing, having those conversations, getting the feedback, like Keisha said, so that you can continue to make your product better or your service better, and making sure that you're meeting your customers' needs. So take the action, do some planning as well to kind of supplement it, to push you outside of your comfort zone. But at the end of the day, it's all about creating relationships with customers and potential customers, and making sure that you're speaking to them and having those meaningful conversations.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to each of you for that. It sounds like, a collective, just do it is what you're saying. All right, so we have a few minutes left. So I would love to get to some attendee questions. We've got quite a few here in the Q&A box. So thank you so much to everyone for putting that in. While we do this, we're just going to launch our feedback poll as well. So you'll see that pop up on your screen. Thank you very much, Miriam, for doing that. So I'll just flick through here to see, what questions here that we can go to. Keisha, there's a question specifically for you. So Heather is wondering, wants to know your thoughts on bringing only one flavor food product to a farmer's market. She had a number of people say they need more than one product or flavor, and I really have to focus on only one at the moment. So what is your advice to Heather?
Yeah, my advice would be, if you have just the one product, like, center everything around that product in whatever way you can talk about it. I think farmers markets, I would say that's not actually like so true either. Like, I know that the market that we were at, there was lots of people who had just kind of one product, but making that product kind of just like be the center of attention. For us, our product is like bright red. It's in clear packaging. So it's the first thing that people see. It's eye-catching. And no one's ever really asked us about, oh, do you have other flavors? Or do you have anything of this? But one thing is, if you have the one product, I would say have a great story behind that product. Why is it different? How is it different? Why does it taste different? Is it made differently, especially at the market? They're all about how it's made, how it's packaged, those things. At the markets, there's huge interest in like sustainability. For us, we're always looking at that, because some people will pass by and be like, well, I would buy that product, but it's not in glass. And so that's something that we're constantly innovating on, and what that looks like. But if it's just one product, make it the best product and do everything that you can to really showcase that in a big way.
Thanks, Keisha. And Heather, I hope that answers your question for you. We have another question from Joan, which I think is a great question. They asked, do you recommend using the websites to make the business plan, or joining a program, or getting other help with it? How reasonable is it to just make a business plan on my own? Rochelle and Nicole, maybe I'll throw this out to either of you.
Sure, I'd love to take that. Keisha talked about this in the beginning. You need to get people looking at your business plan. So I think it's important to get feedback, whether that be, through the YWCA or an incubator or accelerator like YSpace, or friends or family who have owned businesses or own businesses. Like, getting that feedback is absolutely crucial. Having people challenge your assumptions that you've made in your business plan is really, really crucial to making the best business plan you can. So that's what I would say about that.
Thanks, Nicole. Anything to add to that, Rochelle?
Yeah, I completely resonate with that. I think getting the support, having a community around you to be able to bounce ideas off of, get some feedback from, and the topic that we talked about a bit there are the hard things, the things that you don't necessarily want to do or look at or overcome or go through, are probably really crucial pieces to your business plan that you are going to need to go through and develop and strategize around. So having someone there to support you, there's a lot of free programming that you can reach out to that's available to you within our network throughout Canada. So definitely, I think, having that available to you if you want to get started, that's a great way to move forward with your business, but definitely having someone around you, a support network, and there are a lot of available free resources for you to be able to do that. So I would definitely lean into it if it's something that you feel is right for your business.
Wonderful. Thank you both. We've got one question from Ari that I think perhaps will be applicable to you, Keisha. They're asking any advice on gaining confidence with pitching. I had my first pitch and bombed recently. And I'll say before Keisha answers, Ari, I'm sure you did a lot better than you think, but also you only have to do something for the first time once. So congratulations on doing your first pitch as well. So Keisha, any advice for Ari?
Yeah, biggest advice on pitching, I would say, go into it and I'm coming from kind of an athlete perspective. I played volleyball for many years. And so I always go into it as, I'm going in to win this game. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to go in confident no matter how I'm feeling. I always put my two hands on my hips. I stand up nice and tall, chest open, doing all of these kind of they might seem weird, they might seem strange, but just to exude that confidence, really kind of push that. Take your time, make sure you're speaking slow. I know I've been kind of chatting really quick today, but take your time, don't forget to breathe, and enjoy the process. I know that I've pitched, the same thing kind of over and over again. And there's times where I won and there was times where I didn't win. And then I go back to it, and lucky enough, it was recorded so I could see it. And, rather than picking yourself apart through a pitch, look at all the cool things or the great things that you did within that pitch and just feed off of that, because a pitch is your own. It's going to look different. It's going to sound different. You don't want to be having the same pitch as everybody else, right? You want to be differentiated. So, I think it's less about having that confidence, but really just having the want and excitement and passion behind what you're pitching to really shine through. And that's what I tell everybody. I've been judging a pitch competition for St. Mary's right now, the arena, and I get a lot of students kind of messaging me back hey, how could I have done better? What should I have done better? And it's all about that passion. So if I can see passion through that pitch and excitement, if you missed a word or you skipped a word, that's less important, right? And so, focus on that, and congratulations on doing your first pitch. I'm sure that you didn't bomb at all.
Thank you so much, Ari. I hope that answers your question. So we are right on the hour. So I want to give a massive, massive thank you to our wonderful speakers, Nicole, Keisha, and Rochelle, for donating your time and expertise today. I certainly learned a lot. So I'm sure our attendees also did as well. And one more thank you to our co-presenting partners, Scotiabank Women Initiative and UPS, our program partners, EDC, Mastercard, and YSpace, Ella, and our fantastic group of community ecosystem partners. We are hosting another webinar for the Startup Women 2024 program on June 12th, all about navigating the world of grants. So we'll share the registration link in the chat for more information. But thank you so much to everyone for attending. And I hope you're walking away today feeling a little bit more knowledgeable around the process of building a business plan and knowing what steps to take next. So best of luck to everyone who is maybe just about to dive into that process. And we hope to see you at our next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Well,
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.